Did you bring a bottle of whiskey?
We didn't get that memo.
Hold on.
Kevin probably got the memo, but he didn't tell us.
Sure you did. You want to
Pulls
sign
off
it?
like a 30-year
You-
bottle.
you-
Like, look what we
You
brought.
want to sign it too? Hey, what's all that dust on that bottle? I think
there.
something's going on here.
Toasting to triumphs and celebrating the unbreakable American spirit. Welcome to Choir Practice. Brought to you by Law Enforcement Today.
Man, I'm super excited for this episode of Choir Practice because I have been blessed to spend a whole bunch of time with these boys down in Texas on the border. I had to wear this shirt from Warrior 12 just sort of in honor of our trip out there. They sent it in the mail and I thought, well, this is probably going to make some people angry, but it seemed like it fit with all the time that we've spent talking about the border crisis. We're going to dive into these guys and their backstory in a second, but we like to start every episode with a word of prayer. You want to kick us off?
Dear Lord, thank you for this amazing day and our guests who are here from the great state of Texas to share their love and passion for law enforcement. And we're blessed to have them here and to listen to their words. And may they help people and resonate and see their kindness and their love for law enforcement is so important in the way that God has structured it to be for all of us. In Jesus' name.
Amen. I've got some gifts here, guys. So first of all, back in the day when we had started the Whiskey Wall, we used to do a show here called The Whiskey Patriots. And the whole idea was that when our founding fathers were drafting the Constitution, they didn't have easy access to clean drinking water. And so they sipped whiskey. And so I thought it was super fitting for you guys because Texas and my great state of Florida are like the last bastions of freedom, it seems. And we also had this organization, America's Life Reference, sent out these special Revival Awakening Edition New Testaments that have the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. So we have one for each of you,
Awesome.
just to say thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then I thought this shirt was kind of fun too. I thought maybe you could bring it back for Kevin, considering he is the executive director, decided to not show up on this shoot. Kevin was actually had an unbelievable opportunity for a speaking engagement. But this one, you want to read that out loud for him?
You only lose if you quit. I love
So you guys have really held the line down in Texas, man. And so introduce yourselves, tell everyone who you are. Let's dive in.
I'll go first, but we come with some gifts as well. These are the bracelets from this year's Texas National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Police Week. Texas hosts a reception for all the survivors from Texas while we're in D.C. These are the bracelets given out this year honoring the Texas 37.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
And for y'all's coin and patch collection here, TMPA coin, the agency I retired from, the agency of where I live, and a cool patch. We had the total eclipse come through Texas. We had complete dark out for a pretty good part of Texas for a period of time. And Mesquite PD did an eclipse patch that turned out really cool.
That's awesome. Cool, man.
free
Thank
patch
you,
wall.
guys. Appreciate it. Who are you?
Okay, I'll kick it off. So my name is John Sierega. I'm the Director of Field Services and Public Affairs for the Texas Municipal Police Association, TMPA, which you're well familiar with. And so I did my police career in Southern California, the Inglewood Police Department, did just under 20 years. And then in the early 2000s, saw the writing on the wall for California, unfortunately. Saw that pendulum swinging from right to left. Said, I got to get out. And went to Texas, had planned on going back into law enforcement in Texas. However, had an opportunity come up to work at TMPA and take care of cops. And it was too good of an opportunity to pass up, so went to work for TMPA, and now I'm at 17 years.
How did it feel to move from a state that was going real blue to a state that was really red? Because when my family moved from Connecticut out to Florida, man, there was a lot of sideways glances until we explained, no, we're the ones you want.
Right. So I like to think that I sort of started the migration from California. It's interesting. When I first moved to Central Texas, it was still very conservative. Williamson County, the county I live in, very red. It's purple now. What's frustrating for me is to see people leave California because of the policies that are in place, that have been put in place by the left. And and a lot of them are coming to Texas, and they're still voting left, which just it doesn't make any sense. You know, you leave California to escape something, yet you're bringing it to Texas. And there's an expression, "Don't California my Texas," and it's true. Please don't California my Texas.
Well, it's funny because we spent a lot of time out there with some Democrat sheriffs, and Texas is very different. Because it's not, you know, when we talk about policies, TMPA is not a political organization, right? Like you guys have members who are on the left, who are on the right, who are in the middle, and that's what I love about it. But you're pro law enforcement,
Right.
and so you know we're having a little fun here talking about red versus blue. But the reality of it is that all that you guys really care about is being pro law enforcement
Yeah.
and pro law enforcement policies. Your headquarters is in a city that has aggressively gone after law enforcement.
Yes.
And yet, even in that city, you guys had set us up with an interview with the interim police chief, who is amazing and is
Yeah.
working very hard to turn the tide to bring back support for law enforcement. So I think, you know, it's always fun to kind of break balls and everything, but I think it is important that we differentiate between politics and policing, in the sense that we're talking about support here for law enforcement. That's going to be the focus of today. Your background.
My name is Clint McNear. I work with TMPA as well. Retired from Garland PD, which is a suburb of Dallas, butts up to Dallas, kind of on the east side. What's interesting about our police career, the agency I worked at was 360,000, 380,000 population. Older community, pretty rough community, low median income. It was an extremely good place to do police work. And it was interesting. I had the opportunity to visit California with John recently, and it was interesting to see Inglewood is now revitalizing, and it's changed a lot because his police career and stories was a lot of gang activity. The socioeconomic median at the time was really low, and it was interesting to drive through after knowing how his police career went. And you know, they're going in and tearing down all of the rougher sections of town. It's all being revitalized, which is an interesting, and you can see the crime is lower. It's a prettier place. It's interesting times to watch it. To your point about Texas Democrats, we do have more center Democrats. The extreme left is not as common in Texas as it is in a lot of other parts of the state. And to be effective, we have to be friends with everybody. And
Sure.
Not everyone appreciates that. But to accomplish business, to get things across the finish line inside the Capitol, you kind of got to have the old statesmanship. I'm going to be friendly towards everybody until they let me know otherwise that we're not. So glad to be on.
Love it. So, man, you've missed out on some of these border trips.
Yeah.
It's been quite the experience. Why don't we kick it off with the border? What's going on there, man? And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is super important to touch on is that when we were out there, the both times that we were filming, we were in RGV and we were in Eagle Pass. And there were a lot of conversations that were happening in the national media about the war between federal law enforcement and state law enforcement. The
Complete
media,
hoax.
right? The media was saying, you know, Texas cops hate federal law enforcement. They're not working with them. What's the truth?
Yeah, there's several funny stories that are completely skewed. Number one, state, local, and federal law enforcement on the border, I can only speak in Texas, is working beautifully together, and the strengths and weaknesses are being maximized to try and figure out how to accomplish the task. Where the federal folks are handcuffed in some roles, the state folks step in and utilize what their strengths are to be able to mitigate issues, and vice versa. But I can tell you, and you guys documented it well firsthand, that's a smooth operation. To be understaffed, under-equipped, they're maximizing whatever they can, really by old-fashioned just sweat equity and time. And what is endearing to me, I don't know that I have the drive to get up every day knowing that I'm chasing my tail. Because as you can see down there, it's almost like herding kitty cats. I mean, they're chasing people that with policies right now, they know they're going to be back tomorrow or they're going to be back the next day. The second point I want folks to really understand is this isn't only a Texas problem. This isn't only a Southern problem. This is affecting everybody in the United States. And I'll share this. On August the 1st, rural East Texas, a very small police department pulls over a car with 2 Chinese nationals in it. They're both nervous. Their stories do not match, typical kind of interdiction stop. And they find more than $250,000 in gold bullion inside the vehicle. They were traveling from Atlanta to Los Angeles, got stopped in Texas. They can't explain where the gold came from or why they have it. They came across, they admitted they flew from China to Mexico, entered into California from Mexico. And it's believed at this point the gold and them are supporting the cartel. I don't know if it's good or bad they're supporting the cartel, not trying to be sleeper cell for China to destroy our government internally. But either way, they shouldn't be here. It was discovered they were contacted when they entered and given a promise to appear. Obviously, you know, they always appear. They always follow through and appear. But that's one small story that happened 5 days ago of 2 Chinese nationals that shouldn't be in our country, clearly up to something. I don't have $250,000 in gold bars. And there's stories like that all over the United States. Chinese nationals buying land next to our military installations. And people want to say, well, this is about poor immigrants from Mexico that want to better themselves or, you know, come be seasonal, pick crops seasonally. And that's not what I'm worried about. I don't care that a family wants to raise their children in America. I'm worried about why someone needs to buy land next to a military installation.
Totally.
It is a national security issue. It is a threat to law enforcement. Thank God they didn't jump out and kill that officer on August the 1st, that small rural officer on the side of the road by himself, I think at a 4-man agency. But for the grace of God, they complied. That's happening all over our country.
Yep.
This isn't about mom and dad improving their life for their children to pick crops in our country.
We just published a story this morning about a Chinese national here illegally that was picked up at Mar-a-Lago trespassing and was being interviewed and said China was part of the plot to kill President Trump. I mean, flat out said that. Now all of the feds are like, wait, what did that dude just say? So that came out today, and we've had reports come in from all across the country. To your point, this is why we're working with Sheriff Lamb on the Every State's a Border State campaign, because what happens at the border does not stay at the border. Remember, we were talking to one of the police chiefs, and he said, yeah, man, we don't have a fentanyl crisis here. What do you mean you don't have a fentanyl crisis here? We're seeing it every day. He goes, no, bro, they want it gone. They move through here. It doesn't stop here. It passes through here.
Right.
And so when you start seeing billions of fentanyl taps that are being interdicted, and 66% of a lot of these busts are fatal doses of fentanyl, and you start having the conversation with people who are way smarter than me, who are experts in this space, saying, just do the math on that. 66% of them are fatal doses, and we have billions of pills coming in. I mean, a handful of busts would kill every American 10 times over. There's a lot of belief and a lot of fear that this is a chemical weapon that is coming across and is just going to be utilized at some point. It's scary.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said, because I feel that so much misinformation has been. I'm proud to say I'm politically neutral. I'm pro-American. I don't have time for right or left. I'm a pro-American, and I want everybody in this country. I've gotten crap for being on this show because people are like, well, you're the guy who's like a Trump guy, and I'm like,
huge Trump guy, just for the record, to clarify.
And I am no disrespect to him. I respect his right and everybody else's, because I feel like this country has to be together. And what you said about the fact that I'm not worried about that immigrant person who's trying to do a better thing for their life is what people don't understand.
Right.
Is
Right.
Because you read stories, and some of this stuff comes from here too. You read some of these articles and you go, oh, wait a second. I'm not worried about this one little guy here. I'm worried about the fentanyl. I'm worried about, you're right, the Chinese nationals coming in.
Organized crime.
Yep, cartel activity.
And this is just where smart people see it as criminal opportunity. Silly people say, let's just shut it down and not let people in. Well, I got news for you folks. I'm from the greatest country in the world. And if I wasn't from here, I'd do everything in my power to be here. And that's my statement on that.
In the overarching concern I have is along the border, we're seeing more vehicle-borne IEDs, car bombs. They didn't learn that. They're learning it from the terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. The terrorist organizations are being funded with assistance from the cartels. The two biggest concerns in our global danger, so to speak, are cartels and terrorists. Well, when they're networking, one is funding one while the other one teaches the other how to use IEDs, vehicle-borne IEDs. We have a huge problem, and deeming the cartels as a terrorist threat. There's so many steps that need to be taken to protect our homeland. That's first and foremost, because the day we start having car bombs in our country, we have a problem, and it's going to spin every household, family, and soccer mom out of control the day we start having some of these terrorist hits here, and it's a matter of time. And thank God, the director of the FBI, Ray, has finally come out and said there's probably never been a higher time that we're in danger than right now, and it's because of our failure to address our border.
I'll tell you why that scares me. And by the way, I love this challenge coin. I mean, it's really good for my ADD. It spins and everything.
Squirrel.
What scares me is when Ray comes out and he says there are blinking red lights everywhere. That, from my perspective, is the kind of, oh shit, I need to cover my ass statement that you make when things have spiraled out of control to the point where you know that something is going to happen and you want to be able to say, see, I tried to tell you guys.
Yeah, it's not in his interest to have to admit that.
Right.
And when he's willing to admit it, we're in a dangerous time.
Yep. I mean, we've spoken with many members of Congress who have received briefings that said, yeah, everything that you guys are reporting through law enforcement today, not even the tip of the iceberg. It scares the hell out of me because every day we're reporting on some significant threats. And people are sitting around fighting over Taylor Swift and the price of bread. And don't get me wrong, the price of bread is outrageous, but we have way bigger issues here. And it kind of goes back to the whole bread and circus thing. Like if you could distract people and keep their eyes off target, we're in some crazy times. So let's talk a little bit about your new role. Can we talk about that?
Sure.
What's going on out there, man?
A little context, I suppose. TMPA represents Texas peace officers, all law enforcement in Texas. We have about 33,000 and change in members. Small agencies, large, sheriff's departments, hospital police officers, school resource officers. We've been around since 1950. FOP in Texas has been around since 1986. Nationwide, FOP is about 375,000 members. They have a huge national footprint. They were involved at the presidential, when the president needs to know the pulse of law enforcement, they get it from the seated president of FOP. In Texas, FOP has never gained traction. I've been around it for 30 years. Recently, stakeholders in Texas have started to work together to communicate. And under the umbrella to lock arms is the FOP umbrella that everybody is circling under, so to speak. One of the things I've always loved about TMPA is we're not worried about the competitors. We're worried about 83,000 cops in Texas and what is best for them. None of the other stuff matters. And so we've always been about unifying. And if 83,000 cops in Texas are beating to the same drum, you're so much more effective because in the end, we all want the same things. Cops in Connecticut, everywhere, the core values of what we need and believe are all the same anyway. And so for years, we've been trying to figure out how do we unify Houston, Dallas, Harris County, TMPA, the game wardens, the state police. How do we unify? FOP's that umbrella. And in the last couple of years, we've been working towards that. Our conference was 2 weeks ago. I was elected president of Texas FOP.
Nice.
And it's just a continuation of a lot of steps of us to continue to work together. The bigger cities are self-funded in their legal plans. They don't need TMPA. They're big boys that stand alone. But we all work together really as sister organizations. And so this collaboration just cements our relationship under the umbrella of FOP.
So can we have a conversation here about exactly what unions and organizations like TMPA and FOP do? Because I think there are a lot of misconceptions. Like,
Yeah.
for example, you saw the reporter not that long ago was interviewing President Trump about qualified immunity. And forget that conversation for a second and her lack of knowledge about what it is and isn't. I'm reading through the comments and people have no idea what it is. And I'm seeing all these comments like, all unions care about is backing criminals and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, we have a huge education issue in this state. So what is it that your organizations do? And then let's talk about the impact of qualified immunity.
Well, TMPA was formed in 1950. It was a legislative advocacy organization. Civil service had just passed in Texas. For some, not all police officers in Texas have civil service, but it was TMPA was formed to protect the newly passed civil service law. So we started as simply legislative advocacy, lobbyists at the Capitol.
For people who don't know, civil service law, what does that mean?
Due process for law enforcement, due process for discipline, and eliminating the good old boy system, testing for promotions, testing for hiring.
Awesome.
Setting some overall standards. Because even to this day, some agencies that don't have a civil service, if he gets elected sheriff tomorrow, his first day on the job, he can fire everybody and bring in his brother and his cousin to be his chief deputy. And if you show up and you didn't vote for me or you have ugly socks, I can fire you. And so civil service gives some level of standards that everyone needs to operate under rather than the good old boy system.
Got it. Okay.
So for the first 3 decades, up until the 80s, TMPA was just legislative advocacy. And then the need came along for legal protection, legal defense of police officers. And we wrote a legal defense plan. And we also saw a need for good quality training. Texas cops just weren't getting good quality training. There was a real void there. The big departments, the departments like Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, they had the money to train their cops. The rural departments didn't. So we created a mobile training program. So really that was sort of the foundation of TMPA. It was legislative advocacy, training, and legal defense. And, union is a bad word in the South, if you didn't know that. You guys, up here, unions are commonplace, right? And they have been since, the 1800s. And the same on the West Coast. California was a union state. We don't use the word union in Texas. We use associations. Is a better... Softer. Yes, exactly. Softer. Great way to put it. So we're the umbrella association, and then we also mentor and help at the local level form associations so that departments can have the local voice for labor at the local level.
We've been blessed to work with some amazing unions, associations, organizations across the country, and I'll tell you straight up who my two favorite are. TMPA, and I'm not just saying that because you guys bought me whiskey, but that has impacted things, and the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association.
FLEO is a good organization.
And we've, people might see in the camera, Whiskey walking around. Matt, the president of the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, just rolled up in here, got off a plane, but he came down to the border with us, and we spent some time. And one of the things I love about both organizations is that it really that trip showed the unity of how you work with local, state, federal, just to advance safety in this country. But I've also seen, the very first time I met anyone in your organization, you guys rolled out to an event that we were putting on for wounded officers, and you cooked for everybody. These dudes weren't even your members, and you just rolled out with this big-ass grill and just hooked everybody up and just loved on law enforcement. So let's talk a little bit about the community relations that you guys are involved in.
We have a podcast. Clint's one of the co-hosts. It's called Blue Grit, and one of our guests on the last episode was a member who came on just to talk about how TMPA is a family. And that's really, we don't want to just be the guys you call when you've been in a shooting or you're facing discipline, or, you know, the guys you know are down at the Capitol advocating. We want to be there in times of crisis, in times of need. We want to be that family support. And so, you know, after one of the hurricanes, I think it was '05, we bought our first smoker. There were departments down along the Gulf Coast that lost power. The guys couldn't eat, they didn't have a hot meal. And so we went down there and we cooked hot meals for the cops, you know, that were working 12-hour shifts after a hurricane. And so that sort of that benevolent side of what we do just blossomed from there. And now I think we're up to, 15 field reps now that travel the state, just supporting cops, you know, in any way we can, whether it's, you know, a tornado hits and we have to roll in there and help feed the guys and clothe them, or, you know, if God forbid there's an accident or disease, our charities is there for them. I mean, we can go on and on about the different ways that we support the law enforcement family in Texas.
I'm just curious, what was out of all the Blue Grit episodes, which guest was your favorite?
Well, he's one of the co-hosts. So
No, not him. I'm just curious as to which your favorite was.
shameless plugs.
Yeah, no doubt.
I can't remember that guy's name.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of it.
Hey, one of the things that I really love, someone had just mentioned to me, Megan from the Law Enforcement Officers Hall of Fame said, hey, you know, there's a great program going on, CTE, in law enforcement, which is generally associated with professional athletes, i.e. football players and contact sports athletes, and finding out that, you know, hey, we're getting into the weeds on this research, provided me with an article. I start reading the article and find out that you guys are right on the forefront of trying to figure out the correlation between police officers possibly having CTE and the large number of suicides with officers.
So I sit on the board of directors of Copline. Copline it's a hotline for officers in crisis. Started by Stephanie Samuels, a clinician, very, very intelligent clinician, just who's dedicated her whole life to taking care of cops who are suffering with mental health and wellness issues. And she's doing some real cutting edge research now on CTE. You know, it started with the NFL in their research into CTE. And what we're looking at is, you know, cops, many of them are military, right? SWAT, played contact sports growing up, and we're looking at the correlation between brain injuries and the high rate of suicide in law enforcement.
That's amazing, because we know that the number of law officer suicides is just out of control, you know, and we battle these demons on both fronts, right? People are getting killed in the line of duty and then mentally breaking down because of what we're doing out there in the field and managing our own lives, and then the high numbers of suicide. So I was so impressed when I read that article. The greatest part was it was in the first paragraph, and I'm like, okay, where's everybody else? I only saw TMPA, so I was like, wow, I can't wait to talk to these guys. I think that's absolutely amazing. Again, cutting edge, because this is, again, it's saving lives through recognition of how we can save lives. And thank you guys so much for stepping up.
And I need to throw a shout out to our boss, Kevin Lawrence, and our board of directors, who are extremely supportive of Copline. Copline's a great organization. Stephanie's brilliant, again, dedicated her life to taking care of cops. And now she's still involved in Copline. She still runs Copline, but now she's really putting a lot of her time into the CTE research.
What's really cool, the relationship we built with Copline, all field reps are Copline call taker trained to understand, because let's be honest, we're a legal organization, people call us, but probably 70% of our legal calls are not legal.
Right. This
officer's in a crisis. And most of their legal problems started because they were in a crisis, oftentimes. And so we spend more time almost as a crisis counselor than actually trying to address a true legal problem. The true legal problem, I just was in a shooting or something, is a smaller percentage of what we do. And visiting with Stephanie, she's like, well, let's quit putting a Band-Aid on the crises that cops continue to have. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and figure out why. And it was interesting. Her and I were talking late one night. I don't know if she sleeps.
She doesn't.
She's always working. And she goes, well, let me ask you, how many concussions do you think you've ever had? And I said, I don't know, a couple. And she goes, so you haven't been I was a Marine. She said, you haven't been banged around in patrol and in the Marines? And I said, well, I've had my bell rung a lot, like where I was not dumber than I already am. And she goes, those are concussions. We are finding that all you hard-headed men that go, well, I was just had my bell rung or I was knocked, loopy, was concussions. So now how many concussions do you think you've had in your life? I'm like, oh, well, we probably so some of these initial kind of straw surveys they've done, our numbers are even shocking the professionals that are dealing with the NFL, because they thought it was going to be, maybe cops have had a couple of concussions in their career. Our numbers are blowing them out to the point they kind of had to slow down and retool to begin to continue to move forward with the research. That was shocking for me to find out.
Yeah, and the reality of it is, with all this stuff is when officers commit suicides, is kind of getting those families to donate their brains so that we can get that research out there, because this is just, and it starts. And another thing to give you guys another shout out is, you think of Texas, right? Everything's big in Texas, right? And you're talking, what you're saying is, it's that old, people think of Texas and states like that as, yeah, be a man, be macho. Well, you guys are setting the standard by saying, yeah, be a man, be macho, but admit it's okay. It's okay to admit, that you have a problem. It's okay to admit that we need to take care of you, because it's more important that you're here tomorrow for your family and days beyond for your job. And I think that's going to set that standard that's going to start that snowball effect around the country looking into the CTE.
And cops are afraid of change. But what I like about where this is going is, we're not trying to end somebody's career, but there's possibilities in place. I'm too close when we throw a flashbang to make entry on a house, and I realize I just got knocked stupid. Do a concussion protocol. Let me stand down rather than going to SWAT practice the next day and throwing another flashbang and getting concussed 2 days. Have some steps in place to prolong somebody's career and prevent the chances. This isn't if I've had too many, it's going to ruin my career. This isn't a negative. But if I can live successfully with my mental health, without being a raging alcoholic or a prescription addict, let's look at how we can do that. Let's manage somebody's post-career mental and physical well-being and not worry about the effects, because we would never be involved with something that's looking to end careers. But I want you to be successful till you're 75 years old and, playing football in the yard with your grandkids and not killing yourself or, medicating yourself to death. And I'm really excited about some of the possibilities of what this may uncover.
And they can treat them. So you look at someone like Junior Seau, an upstanding citizen, NFL football superstar, and then look at the later years of his life, and they're attributing it to the concussions in the brain, and they could have treated him if they would have known.
And this hasn't damaged the NFL. They're taking protocols, during practice, wearing the larger padded helmets, concussion protocols. It didn't just end a player's career. I think the military has been looking at how to manage people better. It's not great, but they're actually ahead of law enforcement, and law enforcement is now decided to catch up. And how do we take care of people's mental health, and really looking to be better at addressing those things.
Yeah, because we're so good at taking care of our public, but we have to be better to take care of ourselves. But it starts with us. Yeah. Internally, it starts with us. The first person has to say, he can't activate me and say, generally, I have to be able to say to myself, I need help. But when you have resources, TMPA being a big one, that's help. That's help right there, because I can call those people, I can call them, and I know that all they're going to do is say, how can we help you?
And it took a culture change.
Absolutely.
Because I grew up in a very old school department where if you got in a shooting, oh, that was nothing. I'll be at work tomorrow. Or, if you go out on a child drowning, oh, it didn't bother me, even though it did. Yep. And if anybody admitted that, then you busted their chops. And it took a very strong, long-needed culture change, because now in Texas, guys are coming out saying, man, I really need some help. I'm screwed up. I had a couple of back-to-back calls that are eating me alive, and There was a time in the 90s, I never dreamed that law enforcement culture would be swinging as quick as it has.
One thing that's interesting is, there are a lot of departments that are being progressive on health and wellness, but you still have the stigma. And cops, they don't trust their EAPs. Mm-hmm. They don't even trust their own medical insurance, because if the medical insurance comes via the city, they're afraid that if they ask for help, it's somehow going to get back to the chief or the sheriff, and they're going to lose their job. And sadly, again, there are many departments in Texas that are being very progressive, but you still have some very old school chiefs and sheriffs that if they think you're mentally weak, they'll fire you at will. Yeah. We talked about civil service earlier. Only, I think, 85 or 90 departments in Texas out of the 2,800 have civil service. That means the rest are at will. And we do see officers being terminated at will because the sheriff perceives they're weak. So we'll get calls. I mean, we get calls quite often from members who are in crisis. They won't call the EAP. They won't go through medical insurance. They won't tell the department. They'll call us. So Clint and I, we try to attend a lot of the health and wellness seminars. We tour the various treatment facilities out there to vet them and find the best ones. And oftentimes TMPA is the avenue which our members will get help.
One of the things that I've heard from many cops is they're less afraid of the general public and more afraid of their administration stabbing them in the back. And we've seen this
absolutely
all across the country. And I'm not going to throw this particular agency under a bus, but there was a large agency in Texas a few years back that there was an officer-involved shooting. It ended up being a good shoot, a completely justified shoot, but the media was all over it. It was in the middle of the Floyd situation, so everything got rolled up, right? And the chief at the time released the employment records of the officer and actually leaked to the media a question that was asked during the hiring process, which is, if you had to take someone's life, could you? Now, the answer of no was obviously a disqualifier on that, and so he said yes. Well, the chief released that to the media without any context, acting like he was doing the right thing and being transparent to the media, but what that ended up doing was basically adding, gasoline to the fire of the media. Then was like, see, there were all these warning signs. He said he'd be willing to murder somebody. And so where TMPA has really stepped in is providing trustworthy support to officers that are afraid of their own agencies, but they're not afraid to turn to you guys for just that love and support, because you've been a partner, because you've been there smoking the meats and taking them out, taking part in softball games. And so I just really want to kind of end by commending you guys with continuing to be the best association in America besides FLEOA. I see that dirty look I'm getting over there. Just based on the way that you love on the community and you love on your officers. So shameless plug, how can people learn more, support you guys? Go for it.
TMPA charities, 100% of every dollar donated goes back to cops in need. TMPA manages TMPA charities, so there's no cost to the charity. So tmpa.org, and that's one way.
Yeah, my most rewarding moment at TMPA in 13 years is not a legal victory, not helping an officer in a legal crisis. We responded to Hurricane Harvey, and we had socks and underwear and undershirts and food. We were making up trays, and we're just driving all over. And I pull up trying to find a command post to drop off a lot of supplies. And I'm driving down a road, and there's a young deputy standing in the road, erect Tahoe as the barricade to control ingress and egress. And it's probably 48, 72 hours after the hurricane. I pull up and I have a bunch of supplies with me. And I said, "Hey, bud, is this to the command center?" He goes, "Yes, sir." And I said, "How are you doing?" He said, "I think I'm okay." And I said, "Did your house survive?" And he said, "I don't know. I've been on duty since it happened." I said, "Is your family safe?" He said, "I don't know. I've been on duty since it happened." And he was in kind of disheveled uniform. And I said, have you changed? And he said, "No, sir. I've been on duty since the hurricane happened." And I said, "I've got some dry socks." It's going to make me cry. I said, "I have some dry socks and underwear." And he starts bawling. And we were supposed to hand out one pair of socks, one undershirt, and one pair of underwear. And he said, "You have dry socks and dry underwear," and he's bawling. You would have thought I just said, "Hey, kid, could you use $1 million?" And he's blubbering. He said, "Yes, I've been in this for 3 days." Well, I gave him about 30 pairs of socks and 30 pairs of underwear. And I drove away and I thought, when your life is to a point where a pair of dry socks is more than $1 million to you at that point, you don't know if your family's alive. You don't know if your house is still standing. I mean, our charities does so much for people in the time of need. It's incredible.
And the other charities we work with, we're all friends with Aaron Slater, Relentless Defender Foundation. We can pick up the phone. I've done it. I've called Aaron and said, "Aaron, we've got a member who needs help." And within minutes, he's had a board vote and had checks. I'm gonna get choked up too. Had a check written with a lot of zeros after it.
That's what Slater does, man. I mean, the dude has donated more than $2 million to organizations like this. I mean, salt of the earth kind of guy. His better half is just an amazing human being.
Yeah.
It's but man, that's like one of my first trips out to Texas. This was before we were doing anything with you guys. We traveled from, we did San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, and I've always,
a small state.
It's a huge state. I mean, we did one trip out there. We did 5,200 miles in an SUV in 1 week. We came back and they were like, "You're not supposed to do this." I'm like, "Thank God it's unlimited." But we, whenever I travel to, away from home, I'll put it out there on LinkedIn and I'll say, "Hey, coming out to Texas, if anyone wants to grab coffee along the route." And people will often message me and be like, "Hey, when you're in my state, hit me up. Like, we'll have you over for dinner." I'm like, "Don't make that offer because I'll come by for dinner." And I literally, on this one trip, we stopped and ate dinner at random people's houses that have reached out over the years. And that state, man, the reason why I wear my Texas boots and the reason why I have so much love for that state is because everybody there just treats you like family. I mean, we were in the homes of random strangers who, some of these families don't have more than a pot to piss in, and they went out to the grocery store and the shrimp and grits that they bought was probably what they would take a week salary to pay for their family to eat, and yet they just opened up their homes with just love and grace, and that right there is TMPA. That is the spirit of Texas that I'm just so in love with. And so I commend you guys, man, and God bless you for the work that you continue to do, because you're just incredible people and can't speak highly enough of TMPA. So, parting thoughts?
Brothers in action. Love it. I love it. The legacy of what we do for each other is never going to end, and thank you guys for being in the forefront of that.
Well, we appreciate the invite. I know I was second string to Kevin, but no, I'm teasing.
I mean, you were third because
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. You wanted Tyler too. Yeah.
Either anymore, I guess. But we're glad you came. I was actually excited to have you here. And tonight we'll all break bread. We have Doug Hassel from Hassel Cattle Company also flew out from the great state of Texas, man.
East Texas. Yeah.
And that dude sent over some legit steaks, and he's going to be cooking you guys dinner up at the retreat house. So, any parting thoughts?
No, honored to be on. Honored to be, you stand among a lot of giants in law enforcement, and I'm just honored that we are be a part of it and standing next to some of the giants that come out here and come on the show.
Love you guys.
Pleasure to be here.
God bless you all. God bless America. Thanks for that share button.
See you, Mom.
Nice job, guys.
Thanks, fellas.
sir.
My hands are freezing.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us at Choir Practice. For more, please visit lawenforcementtoday.com.